So we are at HPE Discover 2023 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I have a special guest with me. It's not anybody from HPE this time. It's Michael McDowell, who's a charter member of the NAND Research Customer Advisory Council. Helps us kind of look at things through an IT lens. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
How you enjoying the show?
Oh, it's great. You know, it's been a while since I've been to an IT conference.
You don't go to everybody's IT conference?
No, there's just too many out there to go to. And, you know, funds are limited in the corporate world, right? So.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you keep up, as an IT guy, how do you keep up with what's happening in IT? I mean, I guess you surf the web, but...
Sure. Well, that's a good question. And really the question is, how much do I really need to keep up with it in the corporate world,
I guess that's
right?
a fair point.
Because things happen quickly in the industry, as you see here in this conference today. There's all sorts of announcements. You know, you go to a lot of conferences, you hear new things coming all the time, you report on them. But in the IT world, it's not happening that fast, right? Some things come and go before we even have a chance to leverage them.
Well, right? In my job, I get excited by the bright, shiny objects, and that's, you know, Antonio's up on the keynote today talking about large language models and supercomputing as a service. Right. Doesn't impact your daily life? Not yet?
Not yet. It will, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here, is to understand what's coming and how it might apply to our business, right? But to be honest, right, it's a slow process. It's slow to adapt, and really, and the reason for that is becoming more and more about the use case, right? So the technology is getting quicker to deploy, especially with the cloud environment. It's out there. We can spin things up quickly. We can do it at a low cost. So that's no longer a barrier where it was in the past, right? We had to bring hardware in and have special skill sets to deploy it, and then really partner with the businesses to leverage it, right? So really, yeah, Steve, it's really about the use case at this point and having it really fully defined and planned out before you leverage that technology, and that takes time.
So you have a little bit of a networking background. I do not. I was in a session earlier today with the SVP and GM for Aruba, and he started talking about NAS, and I got excited because I'm a storage guy.
Okay.
Network attached storage, what are they doing? But it's network as a service.
Sure.
Isn't all networking as a service? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, network is...
Explain it to me.
Well, I don't know if I'm the best guy to explain that to you, but I will say, you know, traditionally networking is an in-house, it's an in-house function, right? Traditionally, you built out network teams with skill sets, everything from how to configure a network switch,
right,
to protocol analysis, right, to troubleshoot your network. So a wide range of skill sets required there to have really a robust IT department. So network as a service will allow you to offload that type of work, right?
Okay.
So now, let's say the Aruba products, right, the wireless products. So now we have HPE has a cloud-based offering where we have some use of AI. I think there's more of that coming, but you have qualified technicians who can look at the data and look at alerts and understand what it means, and, you know, maybe tweak the power setting of a certain access point remotely, and then boom, the problem's fixed, or maybe recommend a different type of access point altogether. So that's the type of service you're getting with the Aruba network as a service.
So that simplifies things for you.
Oh, absolutely.
So this whole as a service thing makes your life easier.
It does. Now there's still the question. There's still the question of the last mile support, right? So let's say at the end of that troubleshooting session I just described, we realize that an access point needs to be replaced. So now you still have to engage somebody, boots on the ground, to get out there, and that's where I'm seeing a lot of corporations going with how they staff and the technical skill sets within their in-house IT team.
Got it.
So it's a lower skill set, right? A little bit of a commodity type service, but you're leveraging existing staff to do more value-added things in other areas of IT. So it's a shifting dynamic in the staffing.
So one of the things the Aruba guys talked about, is building more basic security functions into their switches. Switches are getting smarter. They're saying the day is not far off where we don't even need a firewall.
Right. Security at the edge.
Do you trust that stuff? Does it work?
I don't know.
That's why it's not for video.
Now, here's what I'll say about security. So, it's all about wireless these days, right? The number of actually wired connected devices is getting smaller. So we have two technologies. We have we have 5G technology, right? And then we have the Wi-Fi technology. So think about your 5G security, how it works today. It's all driven by a SIM card.
Is that true even for private 5G?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Private 5G have SIM cards in them as well. And they're self-managed, right? So your internal IT staff or your network as a service organization will manage those SIMs and security on it. But now all of a sudden you shifted from a PC, which is software-driven security model, to now you have actually a piece of hardware in your mobile devices that drive your security. So it's actually a higher level security, right? Because how do you spoof that hardware? It's much more difficult.
It is.
So as you know, there's a lot of talk about 5G in enterprise environment. It's in its infancy today, but it's coming and it's going to bring that added level of security.
Now, as I understand it, again, I'm not a networking guy, 5G supplements Wi-Fi, doesn't replace it. Is that how you look at it? Now, you work in an industrial setting, so you might have a little bit different answer than your...
Well, yeah, and I think the industrial setting is more complex, and I think it does make sense to leverage both technologies to a certain extent. So, and it all has to do with signal penetration, right?
Okay.
So there may be areas of a site that a 5G signal from afar cannot penetrate, and in that type of environment, it makes sense to put a Wi-Fi access point, right?
Okay.
Now, there's other schools of thoughts that say, hey, well, let's just put that 5G antenna in within the unit. Now you're looking at class 1, div 2, explosion-proof type things, hardened devices, if you will, that are safe to operate. And there's not that many offerings out there, but that's changing. But look at a different type of manufacturing, and that's a chemical plant example. But look at a different type of manufacturing environment, say a food factory, or maybe a factory within a building.
Yeah.
With not many walls, you can install a single 5G antenna, right, that lights up the whole site, right? There's no need for the Wi-Fi. Now I'm installing one cable, one access point that lights up a large area that would take, say, maybe 10 or 15 cables, 10 or 15 Wi-Fi access points. So in that scenario, there's no complementary factor, if you will, or dynamic.
Right.
You pick one or the other, and it comes down to cost of installation. The other thing to consider in that regard is the latency, right, which is driven by the use case. So you may need something that's really quick acting, right? So you need a technology that's has much lower latency.
If I'm in a blended environment, and this is my ignorance, is there a seamless handoff from 5G to Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And that's where companies like HPE really come in Aruba, right? So you can have, you can certainly have devices that migrate from one technology to the next. And if you have a single provider for those, it makes it all the easier. But you can go with multiple vendors and have it all work together. Okay. Now, I can tell you, there's a lot of public 5G usage out there today. And companies are using mobile devices, tablets in the manufacturing environment that may start their day off in connected to a corporate Wi-Fi access point. A trusted device on the trusted closed network, right? They move out of that, out into the field. Maybe they're in a truck, they're out on a pipeline or something. And they leverage the public 5G. Okay.
Really? Okay.
So what happens then? The device is shifting from a trusted environment.
Does it automatically establish a VPN sort of thing?
It does. It automatically establishes it, but not without consequence, right? Because once you go to that public network and the VPN software kicks in, now a new IP address,
right.
Your device is saying, hey, I'm no longer in a trusted environment, so it drops your Wi-Fi connection.
Oh boy.
Your application stops working, okay? And it reconnects in with the full security stack. And the user suffers. They're like, oh, my application just drops. Now I have to relog in and start over. So that's a really neat thing about private 5G over the public. Because you may have public 5G in your area, but it's like, hey, let's go with the private. Now we're always on a trusted environment. We're using SIMs that we manage ourselves, right? So the level of security is much higher, and the user experience is much better, right? Because our applications aren't dropping.
So you're a fan of what Aruba's selling?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan. I mean, there's other industry offerings out there that are very competitive. It's really the private 5G is really in its infancy right now. So lots of things are changing. I know HPE Aruba announced maybe 3 or 4 months ago the acquisition of a 5G company.
That's right.
Of private 5G, which brought some new capabilities to their offerings. So that'll be exciting to watch and see where they go with that.
I want to rewind to something you said earlier. We were talking about networking as a service. You said they got this cloud thing. It does some AI stuff, a little bit of hand waving. So one of the big hot trends in IT is AI ops. You familiar with the term? Where AI is making decisions for how I operate my infrastructure.
Right.
Now, I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
I don't know that I trust that. I still want to touch everything and make that decision.
Yeah. So, that's an interesting concept, right? And it's interesting, when I see these presentations and hear the offerings, it's still, that last mile, that last piece of support is still a bit fuzzy for me, right? Like, finding a problem is great. Reporting on a problem, sending emails
So
and alerts.
let IT say there might be something, or let AI say there might be something wrong.
Right.
Send me an alert.
Or maybe there's
Or
a
make
mix.
a recommendation.
Maybe there's a mix, Steve. Maybe 80% of 90% of the time,
Yeah.
recycling the power of an access point will fix the problem. Okay, so let's put some AI into that. Let's let it reset it 2 or 3 times before we engage an IT guy.
Okay, fair
You know
enough.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I think there's a hybrid approach there that can be leveraged. So in that scenario, it fixes, resets it a couple times, and say maybe it closes it out. Let's see and then let's let AI watch and see if that happens again. Let's let AI say, you know what, Mike, this access point's had to be reset 4 times in the last month. Let's generate an alert, maybe a change control request or something like that, and say, hey, let's go replace that device. And then now your local field services get an incident ticket. They have the hardware and they go replace it. So there is I think there's room in there where you're comfortable, right? But at the same, to where we can automate some things and leverage the advantages of it.
So with ChatGPT, we're almost at the point where you can have that conversation. You can say, hey, Siri, reset my access point.
Oh, yeah.
And he'll say, well, we've reset it 3 times, Michael.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Perhaps
Hey,
we should replace it.
thanks for taking time. This has been fun.
Oh, sure.